But we begin tonight with a date now set for the first criminal prosecution of a former American president. Of course, I'm speaking of Donald Trump. And that date is April 15th. Mark your calendars. No, it is not one of the two trials for trying to overturn the 2020 election or the one for grossly mishandling classified documents when he left the White House. This one is for falsifying business records to hide the hush money payments Trump signed off on ahead of the 2016 presidential election. Those checks were written by Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, to pay off adult film star Stormy Daniels and keep her quiet about her alleged sexual affair with Trump, while Melania, Trump's third wife, was pregnant with his fifth child. Now, I know the idea of Trump getting busy with Stormy Daniels is not the image you want littering your mind at the dinner hour, just like this trial is not the one most people were hoping for. But it may very well be the only criminal case to go to trial before the November election. But that's not to say that it's not an important case, because in the end, it is not a trial about paying off a porn star. It's about lying to the American electorate to influence an election by suppressing negative information about the candidate. Trump paid Ms. Daniels to keep their relationship secret, not from Melania, but from voters. That's why he did it. And remember, the payoff came at a time when Trump was facing harsh backlash to the Access Hollywood video of Trump claiming he could grab women by the you-know-what. At the same time, he was courting once reluctant evangelical voters. And let's not forget that Michael Cohen went to jail, in part for those very payments. So why shouldn't Trump, who was listed as individual one in the indictment of Michael Cohen? Today, on what was originally scheduled to be the first day of the trial, Trump's lawyers failed in their attempts to convince the judge to further delay it or even dismiss it. Judge Juan Marchand was described as appearing uncharacteristically furious as he called out Trump's lawyers for accusing the Manhattan DA's office of prosecutorial misconduct, but providing nothing to back up the claim. Before making his ruling, Marchand added that, quote, "It's odd that we're even here and that we've taken this time." Trump has said that he would be appealing that decision, but the judge said, appeal or not, he expects to see Trump in court next month for the trial. And while Trump may have to finally face accountability for at least some of his actions, he is still catching breaks. As today's hearing was underway, a New York appeals court judge handed him a pretty hefty one, reducing the bond required for his civil fraud verdict and buying him more time. He now has 10 more days to put up a $175 million bond rather than the original nearly $500 million amount that was due today. The appeals court provided no explanation for its leniency. Joining me now is Melissa Murray, law professor at New York University and MSNBC legal analyst. Tim O'Brien, senior executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion and an MSNBC political analyst. And Tristan Snell, former assistant attorney general for New York and author of Taking Down Trump, 12 Rules for Prosecuting Donald Trump by Someone Who Did It Successfully. Thank you all for being here. Let me start with you, Melissa. No explanation from the appeals court as to why they gave him more time. Can you explain?
So this is a 5-judge panel. We don't know what their reasoning is, but it seems clear from the order that they thought that Judge Engoron's order limiting Donald Trump's family's ability to run this company and, of course, imposing that huge $465 million fine was excessive. They reduced that to $175 million, which is exactly the amount that the Trump organization had pressed for in the first instance. And they basically stayed all of the other conditions involving the family's running of the organization, with the exception of the imposition of a special monitor to review all of things. That gets saved. So it does seem like this intermediate appellate court was incredibly sympathetic to Donald Trump. So a win for him today, but not a total win, because $175 million is still a lot of money. He's probably going to have to put up about $200 million in liquid assets or collateral in order to get a bond for this. So he's not out of the woods yet, but this is a significant win for him.
And it doesn't change the underlying rule. He still owes the $455.
He still owes the, again, this is just while he's appealing that decision. Yes.
Does he have $175 million?
He can probably get it. I think he's getting pressed up against the wall right now in terms of what he has on hand that's liquid, that a surety company would feel comfortable bonding because of the collaterals there. They're not going to want to take little bitty pieces of a bunch of different real estate. They're going to want to go after his cash. What's perplexing to me is he already said last week that he has $500 million. After a year ago saying he had $400 million under oath, and then in between those two moments saying, actually, I don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I think in that context, I think the appellate court didn't do a service towards a defendant being clear and honest with the court, even if, and I think the appellate court clearly thinks that Engoron overreached. I think that, they've stayed both the size of the judge, not the size of the judgment, but what Trump needed to put down to appeal.
Yeah.
But they also stayed keeping the boys out of the business and some of the other punitive things that Engoron put in place around the business. So it indicates to me that they felt he overreached. Having said all of that, that's what gets ironed out in an appeals process. They've sort of gotten into the middle of this now and cut away at some of the foundations of both the ruling, and they've signaled what they think about the whole process, and that feels untoward. On the other hand, Donald Trump and people of means routinely get breaks in the judicial process that we average, parking toll violators do not.
Do not. You were practically almost laughing. I saw you. I think you want to say something, Tristan. I feel it in my spirit. So say it.
Yeah, the whole, as you put it, it's, first he had $400 million. He stated that during one of the E. Jean Carroll cases. Then in between it was like, oh, I've got nothing. Yeah. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've got $500 million, and they're trying to take it from me.
No, he has 11 billion T.
That's 11 billion. 11 billion T.
Yeah, billion T.
Plus one.
Plus one.
Plus one.
Let's talk about where he might be able to get the money. Let's play this. This is, let me just read this. So there is a piece that's called Trump's Media Grift Goes Public. This might be the way he finds the cash. Donald Trump has this thing called Truth Social, which nobody's on but his hardcore fans. It's losing a bunch of money. It's in the red. However, what's unique about this thing of really about to go public is whether it's a short-term play like the Trump NFTs and trading cards only scaled way up, or a long-term scheme along the lines of the Trump Hotel in D.C., where corporations, foreign governments, and the GOP faithfully opened up their wallets to curry favor with the sitting president. Will Trump dump his shares quickly once this thing goes public and cash out before the whole thing goes belly up? Will he hang on to the shares in hopes that he wins the White House and can then spend 4 years selling high-priced ad space to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, coal companies, and every Republican candidate who knows what's good for him? Which is it? I mean, he could kind of do all of this, right? Because it sounds like a pump and dump. Could it work?
Well, to begin with, though, he's locked up for 6 months.
Right.
Once the company comes public.
I mean, but he
gets diluted.
Right.
So the other thing is his stake is not going to be $3 billion. Even as of tomorrow morning, I guess.
Right.
It'll probably be, I think, $780 to $800 million.
But can't he get? But can't he? He's got 60% of the shares.
The board can tell him he can go ahead.
That he can take it. Yeah.
To get a waiver from the board, though, I think would expose the company to serious liability from shareholders. I mean, again, for the board to waive the lockup provision and allow him to dump the stock.
You're basically putting up a neon sign that says, go sue me in Delaware for shareholder liability.
And there were two guys from The Apprentice who actually started this. If you guys don't know the whole Truth Social story, two guys from The Apprentice start Truth Social. Then it's going to be bought by this sort of shell company. Then that goes public. And then somehow Donald Trump gets $3 billion. This sounds like a pump and dump. Wouldn't you, if you were still New York AG, wouldn't you be prosecuting somebody for this?
Look, I am not, contrary to popular belief, I do not have like a red telephone that connects me to my old colleagues.
I thought that red thing next to you was the red telephone.
You thought this was the telephone.
I did.
It's this right here. I have to believe that they're at least looking at this.
Yeah.
They cannot not be. I just don't.
It's the way he gets the money.
The thing is, I mean, he's using a vehicle, SPACs, without getting into technicalities. They are designed to avoid the normal IPO process, the normal financial disclosure to reassure investors that you're buying into something that has a track record.
Right.
And it's transparent.
It's profitable.
And full disclosure.
Yeah.
And this is a business that's basically built on Donald Trump becoming president, so his posts on Truth will become more valuable. Yeah. That's the business model.
Let's talk about this other case, because the DA Bragg case, I think, Melissa, gets short shrift.
It does.
Because of there's like it's Stormy Daniels. It's about, ew, we don't want to think about Donald Trump with a porn star. She also says ew, by the way, Stormy Daniels, and I love her. She's great.
She's earned her money.
Talk about this case, because this is actually the case that's going to happen.
No, I think that's right. And again, I do think it gets short shrift because the facts are so salacious and it's so lascivious. But it is a species of election interference, and Alvin Bragg has consistently talked about it in that tenor, that this is like the lead up to what we see on January 6th. It's the dress rehearsal, keeping information from the voting public in order to maximize or optimize your chances for election. Right. And again, to do anything to win. And you see that again happening on January 6th. So again, I think the two cases actually run together, and we dismiss or poo-poo this case to our detriment.
And here's the thing, Tim. I mean, today, one of Donald Trump's fans, I guess we're assuming while he was in court, because our reporters saw him in court, he was not typing, but someone posted to his Truth Social something comparing him to Jesus the Christ. And this is the week before Easter weekend, is this coming weekend, and they compare him to Jesus, and they quote the Psalms 109 in the New King James Version. But I think there's a few lines that they might have missed. It says, let an accuser stand in his right hand. When he is judged, let him be found guilty. It says, let his children continually be vagabonds and beg. Let the creditor seize all that he has. Let his posterity be cut off. In the generation following, let their name be blotted out. Let the iniquity of his fathers be remembered before the Lord. And why? Because he did not remember to show mercy, but persecuted the poor and needy man. Don't mess with a former Sunday school teacher on the Bible.
Amen.
The biggest sin in the Bible is persecuting the poor and the immigrant. To quote that and not actually know the Bible, probably a little bit of an error on the part of his fans.
Lose track of what Christianity is meant to be about.
Indeed.
Love and forgiveness.
Yeah.
At its core, you know, in the Bible. And they're comparing someone who is not loving, who is not forgiving, who's a vicious racist, and he's trying to torch the Constitution. He is the last person on earth who should be compared to any religious figure, much less Jesus Christ, and I say that as an agnostic.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.